Have you ever met someone who's been to the darkest corners of the world and come back more hopeful than ever? This week, I talked with Melanie Marshall, keynote speaker, coach, and former BBC News foreign correspondent, whose career took her into conflict zones and disaster areas around the globe. But instead of being consumed by the devastation she witnessed, Melanie found something else: courage, connection, and a deep belief in the goodness of people. In our conversation, she shares what it means to hold both the light and the dark at the same time, how imposter syndrome nearly derailed her, and why grace for ourselves and for others is the key to moving forward. We also talk about finding clarity in the chaos, staying grounded in your values, and the quiet power of telling your story with honesty and heart. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. Welcome to the Impostor Syndrome Files. My name is Kim Menninger, and as an executive coach and former high-tech leader, my personal mission is to help professionals overcome imposter syndrome so that you can advance your career with confidence. Each week, I interview a new guest who brings a powerful perspective to this conversation, including personal stories, best practices, and new insights. The more we talk about this issue, the more we destigmatize imposter syndrome, recognize that we're not alone, and empower ourselves to access the tools and resources that can help us and those around us. Thank you so much for listening and for sharing with others you think would benefit from this conversation. Welcome, Mel. It's so great to have you here today. I've been looking forward to this conversation, and I'd love to start by inviting you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born in, no, I won't go that far back. My name's Melanie Marshall. I am a proud Canadian, and I say that because I am finally back in Canada after many, many years wandering the world for BBC News. I was a foreign journalist working in danger and disaster zones, a lot of places people would probably think of as scary, but I often found inspiring. And I have had the most wonderful life and career. And I wanted to do more with that. And I wanted people to understand what, why I think we are not doomed and how I think we can move through the uncertainty, personal and bigger, that we find ourselves in. So now I'm out in the wide world as Ronin, if anyone knows that. I'm, masterless samurai, only masters myself as a keynote speaker, a filmmaker, and a coach.
I have so many questions for you because I think the world that you were a part of for so many years is one that is unimaginable to so many people. And like you said, probably very scary. And I wonder, I'd love to go a little bit further back and just ask you, was that a plan that you had? How did you get into that kind of work?
When I was younger, I never dreamed of getting married or having kids or like, when you think about what do we dream about? I always I bought travel books. I remember that. I remember being like 12 years old and like circling countries. In that time, there was this Let's Go series, and I would circle these countries I wanted to go to. And I wanted to travel the world and have adventures. That was what I dreamt about.
Wow.
And I first went backpacking across Europe when I was 18 years old. So when I graduated high school, I graduated when I was 17, and I moved out about 2 weeks later to go and earn money to go traveling. And I mean, my mom says, she's like, well, you know, she said, people said to me, oh, you must be so worried about this. And she said, but we didn't really think we could stop you. There wasn't any sense we could stop you. And I saved up the money and I went traveling. And I went to Europe and I backpacked and I saw all these places. And I loved it. I mean, that, if you want to know what was the beginning of that it was that.
Mm.
And then I worked more and I went back. And I mean, my first conflict zone, although I always say it was very quiet at the time, was I went to Dubrovnik when it was just towards the end of that conflict, the Balkans conflict. And it was the first time, I mean, it wasn't dangerous, I swear. I was like 19. But honestly, like I probably was a bit stupid to go. And I remember sitting in a cafe with these incredible people who'd welcomed me in, and you could hear them shelling the airport. I definitely didn't tell my mum this at the time. And you could hear them shelling the airport, and we were sitting in a cafe drinking sodas. And I obviously must have looked a little nervous because somebody reached over and patted my hand and said, "We'll tell you when to worry."
Oh, wow.
But I mean, that's way back. How
Mm.
did I get into it was at one point I was backpacking and traveling and having a grand old time. And none of my friends, I was in Amsterdam, none of my friends made enough money. They were all artists and students to marry me and, give me a visa. And I had this realization, I'm going to go back to school. And I thought, well, what would I like to do to travel and have adventures? And I thought, I'll go study journalism. And so off I went. And I thought, well, I want to work in foreign news. I care about the world. I want to tell the world stories. I want to tell stories about the world to the world. And when I had a chance to do a work experience as part of my degree, I thought, well, I want to see if I really want to do that.
Mm.
And I managed through a long series of phone calls, a long series of late night annoyances of um, various correspondents. I managed to convince the then Africa bureau chief for the BBC. Um, he was kind of guilted into taking my phone call. I convinced him to take me on as an intern.
Mm.
And that started it because I he said at my leaving party, well, if it didn't work, I was going to just shove you in the corner. But I ended up going to the Okavango Delta, it should be on everyone's bucket list in Botswana. And I remember being in this tiny plane flying to film this feature about ecotourism, which at the time was nothing, right? It didn't exist. And I remember being in this tiny plane, seeing wild dogs beneath me, and thinking I was born to do this. Like, this is it. I
Wow.
met Nelson Mandela.
Wow.
Like, I mean, I totally humiliated myself, but like, I was too excited. Like, to this day, that's the only one that like matters. All these things. And it was like, it was exactly what I thought it was.
Mm.
And I just kept going. I had it. It was in my blood then.
It's amazing because there's a way in which I think so many of us can relate to that aspiration of wanting to see the world. But you ended up in pretty difficult circumstances, right? Conflict zones, like not necessarily the places that we put on our bucket lists.
I suppose I never thought about it in terms of sometimes the place, because these are often incredibly beautiful places. Like Afghanistan
Mm.
is beautiful.
Mm.
And the people, when they are not being horribly oppressed, are funny. Like one of the reasons I love it is because I love to laugh. And Afghans love to laugh. So like, I love it because it's beautiful and people love to laugh there. So, job done. And Syria, another place that's incredibly beautiful and has great food, right? So, you know, you so maybe, I'm attracted to the people and the story,
Mm.
and maybe you don't put it on your list, but I don't judge it as scary the way some people do because I don't think about it in that sense. I think about it from the sense of, oh, is there a story to tell? Are there people to meet?
Mm.
And I see the whole thing. And places are never as scary or as bad as you think they're going to be. Like I've been on planes where I'm like, oh boy, this is a bad idea. Like I have, like I've been on planes where, oh no, I don't think this is a good idea. And then you get there and you're like, oh, this isn't so bad. You know, I can do this.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot too, just in the way that the media presents places. I would imagine that there are stories across the world about certain as areas of the US that people would be afraid to come to that we don't even blink at, right?
Listen, I got this because I did this drive from Mexico up to Canada because I wanted to go and experience all of these places differently.
Mm.
And the number of people who were worried about me driving through America, and I was like, guys, like, I promise you, it's okay. My experience is overall, people are good.
Mm.
Most people. A lot of people are selfish, and that includes me, right? And when you give them something else to connect to, like humanity, and when you give them the opportunity that they can see to do good, they'll take it.
Mm. That is, that brings me hope, especially at this point in history. And I think that's what's so fascinating about your message is that intuitively we might assume that what you've seen would lead you to this very dark conclusion about humanity and the world. And yet that's not how you look at it. And so I really want to hear more about how you've come to your point of view.
I mean, it's not that I don't have days where I think, how can people do this?
Mm.
Because I have um I have days where I think where I've lost somebody or where I've seen some great cruelty, or sometimes when I would come back from somewhere, what I would find hardest is going to the grocery store. Because I would be coming from somewhere where people were in deprivation, and I would go to some place where there were like 20 kinds of cheese and 10 kinds of Eggo. And I would find myself kind of frozen.
Mm.
And I would have to like find a way to move into like, it's okay that I have this. It's okay that I'm here in this place. And as long as, not, it's kind of like not as long as like, this is okay as long as I am also sharing my gifts and being of service. And also remembering that we can, one of the things I guess I would want to share is that we can really think we're not like other people in other places. And it sort of takes away their agency and our own. Like, I know that you are probably way more like some of the women I've met than you know.
Mm.
You're an educated woman, you're curious, you're empathetic, and so are a lot of these women. And it doesn't matter to them if they've got 10 kinds of egos to choose from when they go to the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
What does matter to them? Their families,
Mm.
right? And so there are similarities and there's agency to choose what does and doesn't matter. And that's one of the ways I've come around to my viewpoint is to not, I'm trying to find the word for it, to not be, it's not condescending. That's not the word, but it's almost condescending. Do you know what I mean? Like where like we can not like the circumstance, but we can also give them the gift of being happy, having joy, knowing what they want, not needing to have exactly what we want for it to be good.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Yeah, because that also assumes that our way is the only way.
Yes, and it isn't, right? We can be similar to them and go a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
And I think when we kind of come to a more of a place, for at least for me, when I am able to be in a place of equilibrium like that, then I'm also able to act more. Then
Mm.
I'm in a place where it's like, okay, and I can act. And again, it doesn't mean I'm not sad. I have been raising funds for a family that I know in Gaza right now, that I know personally in Gaza right now. Am I sad? Yes. Am I determined to do something? Yes. Am I happy that I'm able to give other people a way to do something too? Yeah, great. So it's like, I also think we have to be able to believe we can hold nuance because I think too often when we talk about moving through uncertainty, finding optimism, it's like, oh, well, it's all great or it's reality.
Yeah.
And reality is light and dark, right? Like in our own lives, it is light and dark. And I don't know about you, but some of my darkest moments have been when the most love and care and vulnerability and truth of connection has come in.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
So, like, make room for the nuance.
And that's something that I don't think we do well, partly because of time.
Mhm.
And we're all so inundated with information and stimulation from so many different sources all the time that we have oversimplified the world around us. It's either you're like me or you're this other, right? And I think one of the things that I haven't had nearly the experiences that you've had, but I did have the opportunity over the last few years to lead a leadership development program for women in Southeast Asia.
Amazing.
Yes, and one of the things that I found most fascinating about that experience was that I'd find myself sitting at a table, we're dressed differently, we speak different languages, we have different religions, everything about us is different. Yet at our core, we are all experiencing the same struggles where we find this joy in the same things, right? It's very similar values. And just that ability to get to that level really does put a lot of other things into perspective. And I can see that connection to the optimism that you're talking about, even though the circumstances may be dark and so that's right.
Yeah, and but the connection's real also. Like that connection, that point of connection. Like one of the reasons I wanted to move out and do something different is to tell the whole story.
Mm.
Because, the news does an important job and I love it and I believe in it. But if you looked at a mirror that only showed you how ugly you are, you wouldn't look, right? You wouldn't look in the mirror. I wouldn't. It's like going to the change room, right? And trying on a bathing suit. It's like, ah, you know. And like there are so many people who are turning away. And I understand why. Even me, I know I have friends who are journalists who are like, I don't watch the news. Journalists too, because it overwhelms us. And when we are overwhelmed, we sort of turtle.
Mm.
And we hope that somebody somewhere else is going to sort things out. And it's a very human response, but the problem with that is that it's not going to get sorted out in your favor, usually,
Yeah.
right? Like you're going to, yeah, like it'll get sorted, but you're going to wind up somewhere else. And like the thing is, when these women that you were working with, I will bet that you were talking about they had joy in their lives. They were working with agency, right? They were doing things. And you were able to find things in common.
That's right.
And so, if we can take the lessons from how they are doing that in very difficult circumstances, and this is what I'm trying to do now, uh, we can do anything in our lives in dark times, in uncertainty, personal uncertainty, corporate uncertainty, social uncertainty. We can do it. I
Mm.
really believe that. And I partly made this change. I talk about her in this TEDx talk I gave, but I met this woman named Rada who I met her because she was paragliding over Mosul in Iraq. And she was a divorcee, she was a teacher, and she was hilarious. And she and I just bonded right away. And she was like, making jokes like a man's heart is like the wind, it changes every 3 seconds. And like we had nothing in common culturally, right? We were from totally different worlds, but we got each other, right? What is it like to be a woman in a man's world who sort of stands out, is a little bit different? And we stayed in touch. And that connection, the way she was, her bravery in just shining as she was and being like, you know what, I am going to live each day as myself, inspired me.
Mm.
And like, I had this cat that I always used to get pets on every assignment. It's like, I can't help myself. I still do. And she would like every single picture and we would communicate on Facebook. And, um, she was killed by Islamic State. They killed her because she was like everything they hated, right?
Mm.
And, um, and I say that because it's not all rainbows,
Mhm.
right? We're going to lose. Optimism, hope doesn't mean we're always going to win. Like justice would be she is with us,
Mm.
but it is about trying for the things that matter to us. And I really believe that when we are acting in service of those things, everything else kind of starts to fall away. And for me, like we will lose and we keep going.
Mm.
And Rada, like, that inspiration, I do have like, okay, I got to do this because I think, okay, I want to tell her story. And then she's still an inspiration. Like she's gone, but she's still an inspiration. And that really matters to me, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, we talk about imposter syndrome. I'm sure Rada had like, who am I to jump off the side of a I'm sure we all have it, but she lived as she wanted to live for as long as she could. And she took care of people. She took care of the people she cared about. She, and can we not learn from that? Can we not live that way?
You're so right. And I mean, most of the listening audience is not going to find themselves in that kind of a circumstance, thankfully. But we
Thankfully.
all face, right, our own unique challenges in different ways. And one of the things that I'm thinking about as you're talking is when it comes to imposter syndrome or any form of self-doubt, really knowing who you are and what you stand for is a powerful antidote to that. Because when you are focused on what you care about, who cares what other people think, right?
Yeah.
Who cares whether, I make a mistake from time to time? I am so mission driven at that point that it is more
Mhm.
important to me to do what I believe is the right thing to do than it is to try to protect my ego from,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah. That is absolutely it. And as somebody who has like I just like I describe it as like a big black demon that occasionally gets its claws into me and kind of tries to like suck me back into the shadows. Like that's how I think of my imposter syndrome because occasionally it is like who are you? Who the hell are you? Like and I and when it is pulling me back is when I am not truly in the flow with the people I care about, with the story I care about, um with the work that I'm doing. And that's when I'm like in my like I'm sure your listeners will know this one when you feel like just tortured, right? When you feel like you're literally being tortured by the self-doubt.
Mhm.
And the more deeply I am in that feeling of service and flow, the less that demon has its claws in me. And I know I've seen that with the people whose stories I've told as well. They when they go so deeply into that, it's like, wow, wow,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And look, I mean, it's going to happen to all of us. We're all going to have dark nights of the soul where I mean, it is going to happen. I do think that's where it is also important to have each other.
Mm. Yes.
It is important to have somebody who is I have this guy who's my work dad and who, um, I remember once I was crying on a bus and because, I things weren't going well at work. It was very like toxic at the time, and it's like I felt like nothing I could do was enough. And I think this is probably something everyone can relate to, right? It's like I was working so hard. I was giving absolutely everything, and I had been as a woman in foreign news, you are expected to accomplish the impossible and yet somehow never be too tough, never be too rough, never be too like, it's always the like, you kind of always have to have this balance, right? And it's like, and I think I chose that. I think I like found a place where I could torture myself and achieve at the same time. So I do think this was a choice. But I was having a particularly hard time. I had gone for a job that I really wanted, that I was incredibly overqualified for, actually. And they'd said to me in the feedback, we think we'd like a little bit less of a steamroller. And this was after I had won, like I've won, I'm not trying to be like up myself, but like I won like a Peabody and like a Royal Television Society Award and a BAFTA. Like I've won awards, like and and I was so I didn't know what I was going to do. And I remember being on and so that the demon had its claws in, but good, right? It's like, well, I must be nothing.
Mm.
And my work dad cookie saying to me, you're not alone in this world, Marshall. You're not alone in this world.
Mm.
And I do think sometimes, I know we've got to do it for ourselves, but I also think having a network of people who really see you is so key.
Hmm. Yes, yes. Well, and I would say it's funny, it feels like the all of the conversations I've had this week have been sort of leading
Is there
to
a thread? There was always a thread, right?
this. Exactly. And I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody who was talking about how he wants to be his own cookie, right? And
Love that.
and I think that's wonderful for us to aspire to and to really not tie all of our self-worth and all of our confidence to someone else, but at the same time I think it's really important to acknowledge what you're saying, which we are biologically social
Yeah.
creatures. We are designed to support one another and to interact as a unit in community. And so I I think it's a both and, right? We don't want to we
Mhm.
want to continue to work on ourselves, but we don't want to give up those really powerful connections that fuel us.
Yeah. And I think the trick is to not put the power. Like what I did was I put the power originally for a long time, I put the power in the hands of people who would feed the fears, right? That sign,
Mhm.
on the internet, don't feed the fears. I would put it in the hands of the people who would feed the imposter syndrome.
Mm.
And then I think the lesson that I finally learned was to put it in the hands of the people who really saw me,
Mm.
right? And that's like the build the team. Like there's a saying that I absolutely put into place when I was covering the zones I went to, I don't know what you want to call them, places you wouldn't want to go, which is never go anywhere with people who don't want to come home as badly as you do. Like that was a rule I lived by.
Mm.
And it meant always choose people who have like the same values as you on a team, right? So you don't want to go with some hot shot who is so keen to get shot at, right? You're going to get blown up. That's basically what it means.
Mm.
What it means for this is you want to choose the right people.
Mm.
Like don't, because I think we can do that unintentionally. We go to people who are going to reinforce the thing that we're afraid of, the wound, right? So go choose the people that you would, I know none of you want to go to a war zone, but go choose the people that if you were going to a war zone with, they'd be the ones, right? Like
Yes.
it's
And
and you're right, the more you can build yourself up. But I think also for me, one of the things I am now the most proud of is modeling for the next generation.
mm.
Like like it fills me with joy. Joy. Like absolute joy if I get a WhatsApp voice message from one of my mentees telling me about how they didn't take shit. Sorry, you're going to have to use the explicit label. Like it fills me with joy when I get something where they're talking about their worth. And it fills me with joy to be able to to tell them, you have it. Like that's amazing to me, right? I don't know, try and do better by the next generation and model for them. And again, like having left, uh, it was so scary to leave a complete identity behind
Mm.
on a belief, having gotten to the point that I believed enough in me. Like I say, like I bet a lot on myself to be like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to tell people what I really think, which is essentially what I'm doing now, right? And it's like, I'm going to tell them what I really think. And then it's like, sometimes I still have these like 2 a.m. moments where I'm like, I've bet a lot on myself, and I still don't know where the dice are going to end up. And like that has been a much scarier experience than driving, you know, into Libya when
Mhm.
Muammar Gaddafi was, losing power. And that was crazy and very dangerous, but this is much more the core of my identity. That was just don't get shot.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. It's interesting. I was wondering about that too.
Yeah.
It's there's a way in which your brain adapts to what you're doing, right? And I wonder if there's something really focusing. Like your all of your attention is on what's going on in this moment.
There's a book called War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning. And
Mm.
it's about a guy who was a photojournalist and became a drug addict because war was like a drug. And I don't think it was that for me, but I think that there is this, yeah, it's like an immediate focus, right? You're like, whew, this is my mission. And
Mhm.
it's your identity, but it's not you. It's not quite as vulnerable.
Mhm. Mhm.
And there's a vulnerability to stepping out on your own that actually okay, so I don't think I told you this before. When I graduated university, I won this competition for internet entrepreneurs that was funded by Melinda Gates and all of these people.
You
And
definitely didn't tell me this.
oh yeah, okay, I didn't tell you. Well, I'm going to tell you this one now. You get this one right at the end. This is your and it's important. It's important because I don't regret it, but it shows where I am now versus where I was then. I won this competition. It was funded by this internet incubator, which is like for the kids listening, it was this thing once upon a time where they'd take a huge cut of your company and give you desk space, basically. But it was supposedly they were going to build your company. And I had this idea, which was really actually now I look back very innovative. The tech didn't exist. It was for multimedia, like a multimedia Huffington Post, international news model, and called Hippocat. And which is a Wolof word, which is West African. It means eyes wide open ahead of their time. Still a cool name.
Mhm.
And it won. And I think it partly won because I was going to be a good spokesperson. But I was supposed to win $250,000 and all this business support. They put me on every TV program going. I said some things I regret trying to people please. Like I said because they had this business program following me. And I said, oh God, it's this one still, you might have to help me psychologically through this one. I said on this business program, I've written a pretty big check with my mouth. Now let's see if my ass can cash it. Which, like, as a producer, I would have marked that clip right away, right? But I was trying to make them happy, right? I
Yeah.
was trying to make everybody happy. Anyway, to make a long story short, I never got the money, really. I did all this pub press. They never released the money. They went public and then they went bust.
Wow.
So I wrote a big check with my mouth and I couldn't cash it.
Mm.
And at the same time, I was selected by the World Economic Forum as one of their global leaders for tomorrow because they had read my proposal and what I was trying to do with global media, and I'd won this thing, and they wanted to fet me, and I was invited to Davos.
Wow.
What do you think 25-year-old me did with that information? I put on imposter syndrome like an evening dress.
Yes, I bet.
I went to Davos feeling like a complete failure.
Mm.
Some of my fellow, um, some of my fellow global leaders for tomorrow were also at that time probably mostly bullshit artists. So
Yes.
now you're really gonna have to put like. So I think Mark Benioff was in my year. Sergey Brin was in my year. Um, Yeah. Martin Varsavsky, who's now become a bit of a nut job, I hear, but he was in my year. There were lots of very impressive people. Also, some really lovely guys who are doing incredible stuff with like AI and quantum computing now, like Jack Hittery were in my year. All these incredible people. I was so consumed with self-doubt and imposter syndrome that instead of networking my butt off and being like, hey, I had this great idea. They haven't given me the money. Who wants to give me the money? I thought I am just going to. I gave a speech. I mean, I still got to go for a few years actually. I gave speeches, so they got me to speak after dinner. I was fun. I sang at the, parties, but I didn't take myself seriously
Mm.
because I thought I'd failed.
Wow. Yeah.
And I held on to that for 20 years.
Mm. Wow.
And it was part of the reason. I mean, I know it looks maybe hilarious to outsiders, but I, it was shortly after that. I mean, so I'd done my work experience at the BBC, then gone back, graduated, written the business plan. The same day I graduated, I'd won this competition, gone off, then I, you know, lost all the money, went to Davos, didn't take myself seriously. Well, Mark Benioff was making $1 million deals off at that point, nothing. But he's done very well for himself, obviously. And I went back to Canada and thought, I'm an absolute failure. I'm going to hide. I'm
Mm.
going to hide.
Mm.
And the business program came out with my quotes all over it. I was utterly humiliated. And the BBC called me and said, do you want to move to New York? And I said, yes.
Mm.
And they said, do you want to think about it? The same phone call. I said, no. And so it's funny, right? It turned into a global career that was everything I could dream of. Incredible success, a chance to see the world and be of service in a way that I believe I was really meant to be of service. I don't think, I don't know, I don't think I would have been a good billionaire. Maybe, maybe I still will be, but I don't think that was my path. However, what I did was like I made a bargain with my imposter syndrome. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Can you hear that in it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it just it your story is so unique, but I feel like there's a version of this story in so many people, right? Where imposter syndrome just sort of robs us of these opportunities and it's so interesting because as I'm hearing you tell that story, I'm also mindful of the fact that throughout your whole career in all of these, conflict zones, your attention has gone to what's the positive and where can I find the hope and the optimism. And yet in those moments, that you're describing at Davos and everything. It's like all about what did I do wrong? What's the right? Like, well, how am I not worthy? Right? And so, like the grace we give to others, we do not give to ourselves.
Yeah. And how long, if I could do one thing for others now, I would like, well, I mean, I think my gift now is to try and help others to just keep moving. And I think when they do that, they, when you do that and when you train yourself to be more optimistic and more hopeful, I think grace comes with that. I really do. I think it somehow grows with that because I know it has grown for me.
Mm.
Because that grace that I now give myself, not perfectly, it is super imperfect, but the grace I now give myself is why I did finally say, oh wait, I still have so much more to give. Like I'm so grateful for all of those years and that part that I stopped, that I arrested, that part I had to give that I stopped, I'm not done. I want to do it. And if I hadn't found the grace you're talking about, I wouldn't be here with you right now. However imperfectly, right? Even if I get off this call with you and I go and think, oh, why did I say that? And what did, even if I do a little of that, that's okay,
Mhm.
right? That's okay. Fine. Go breathe, look at can I seriously recommend nature to everybody? Like, that's another one, right? It's like I've done it all over the world. That's another one. Stars. Whoo. They're available everywhere.
Yes, and I think too, it's important to recognize that you were a different person, much younger with, different life experience. And I think that's the thing. How do we take the lesson without perpetually beating ourselves up?
Mm, yeah.
Right. You went on
Yes.
to live this extraordinary life and to have all of these amazing experiences. And, while certainly you can look back in hindsight and say I would have done this differently had I had the chance to do it over again, then we miss the opportunity to embrace and savor all of the other things that life has brought us.
Yes, I think that is so key. And I wonder what you think is what unlocks that? What do you think unlocks that for most people? What is the key there to give us that?
I think a lot of it is a deliberate practice that when we start to go to that beating ourselves up place, we substitute that with but what can I learn from this and what will I do differently going forward, right? It's a frame. And I think so much of what you're describing is what is the frame we choose to put around the experience that we're having in any given moment. And we are imperfect creatures. The more we, the more
Yeah.
we try to be perfect, the more energy we waste and the more heartache we experience. And so instead of just criticizing ourselves, to instead say, okay, why is this affecting me the way that it's affecting me? What's the value here that I want to hold on to? Right? Like what's the choice I want to make differently the next time I find myself in this situation? And then it becomes a lesson and not like this catastrophic moment that defines us.
I love that. I love that. I love that as having a frame. I think that's so powerful for me. Thank you. And for your listeners. And it's okay if it takes time. And I think also to like for me, I do think I now count I carried the weight of the mistakes for so long and somehow forgot sometimes, which is hilarious considering I even talk to people about like, you know, how important it is to carry gratitude. Usually gratitude for the present, because I'm all about taking stock of the present, being in the now. But like my life has been like honestly, like I know you're talking about it being scary, but like I don't think of that. When I remember my life, I think I was on the phone with somebody I know the other day in Jerusalem, and we were talking about some of the tough stuff, and we were talking about, helping people and just different things. And but we were talking about like laughter, and we were talking about jokes, and her little girl who knows me really well was getting on to want to see my dog. And like what I remember from most of my different postings and life and experiences is that like it is the connection, it's the joy, it is the moments of wonder.
Mhm.
Like that is what I generally remember. And when it sucks sometimes, and it does, then, that's when like I care for my small tiny animal. And occasionally I like, need somebody to tell me, you're not alone in this world, Marshall.
Wow. I could truly spend hours continuing this conversation. There's so much that you bring to this to this discussion, to this world, to this topic. I love talking to you, and but in the interest of time, I want to, for everyone else who's having the same reaction that I am, I want to give you a chance to tell us how we can get more of you. Where can people find you if they're interested in staying connected?
Well, you just come on over to my house. We'll sit on the porch. We'll have a chat. Um, if you can find me, I'll make the tea. Well, I am out there speaking and giving workshops, so you can get in touch on my LinkedIn or on my website, which will be in the show notes, taking bookings for fall and winter 25 and 26. And I also have a YouTube channel where I just put up videos and stories, and you're welcome to have a look and a listen.
Wonderful. They will definitely be in the show notes. And thanks again, Mel. Thank you for being you. I really love the message that you're bringing to the world. It's so timely, and just so grateful to you.
Thank you for doing this, Kim. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to the Impostor Syndrome Files. If you would like to continue this conversation in a safe and trusted space, I would love for you to join my virtual discussion group every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. For the past several years, the group has been limited to women, but it is now open, regardless of gender, to anyone who is interested in exploring and troubleshooting common workplace challenges, building better awareness of ourselves and others, and becoming more inclusive allies at work. Check out the show notes for more info on how to find us, and please join us next week for another episode of the Impostor Syndrome Files.